Very, very little. You can count them on 2 fingers. I mean, let's say this. If you want to know about those things, all of the nosy people in the world,
But once we say it, we don't have to say it anymore.
Read my book, Moonwalker. It's in my book.
Did you start having plastic surgery because of those teen years, because of not liking the way you look?
No, not really.
Not really?
No, it's only 2 things. Read it, get my book. It's no big deal.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another video on my channel. Yay! I came here with the karaoke microphone that has not worked for years and just put the Apple microphone on it. So as you can tell by the title, I'm going to be talking about and just reviewing Michael Jackson's autobiography, Moonwalk, that he released in 1988. So before I kind of get started on that whole thing, I just wanted to say real quick that thank you for the support of my last video. It truly means the world that so many people tuned in and watched it and things like that, so I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much. And another thing is I did actually film me doing a review on Remember the Time, the book that Bill and Javon, who were Michael's bodyguards for maybe like from 2006 to maybe like 2008, because 2008 and 2009 were kind of a really rough period for them as his bodyguards, because a lot of people and shit got in the way. But you know, read it if you want to find out what. But I might actually scrap that video because I feel like I was all over the place, and who knows, I might be all over the place this video. I'm gonna try not to be all over the place in this video, but I feel like it was all over the place. It was getting late, the lighting wasn't great, and I don't know, it was like a 2-hour long me of talking, yapping.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Which I'm gonna try not to make this video 2 hours, okay? I will yap, so Remember the Time is a really good read, so I really suggest reading Remember the Time. Remember the Time got made into a Lifetime movie called Searching for Neverland, which is a pretty decent movie. I enjoy the movie, and I've had the copy of Remember the Time for a long time. And since I had rewatched Searching for Neverland, I was like, let me actually read the book. I mean, I more like listened to the book, but I guess same difference. And then I also had the copy of My Friend Michael for a long time too, and I decided to actually listen to the audiobook of that as well. That one's also a pretty good read. Now, I know that maybe like Frank Cascio and like the Cassios may be a little shady, especially with the Michael album, as I've heard. I don't know. But I guess at the end of the day, they were really good with Michael and to Michael, and you know, it was still a really good read. I would also recommend My Friend Michael. Yeah, cried like a baby at the end. Love that for me. And so since I had gone on this book, I guess, adventure, which I don't do, this is very fucking rare for me, and I guess to be fair, I listened to the audiobooks of those 2 books, so I didn't like read it. But does listening to audiobooks count as reading? I guess, in a way, I don't know. But that led me down to want to actually get into Michael's autobiography, Moonwalk. So it is, I think, 6 chapters. Yeah, it is a 6-chapter book. Not that long, honestly. I thought it honestly looks pretty thick a little bit, but honestly, I surprisingly went through it pretty fast, and that's saying something because I don't read. I really don't. And obviously there was no audiobook for Moonwalk because it was released in 88, so, and I don't think anybody bothered to make it an audiobook form, so, which is fine. It wasn't a big deal. It was like, just suck it up, you can read it. It's not that big of a deal, so that's what I did. And initially I was going to make this review more in depth and to the point where I would write notes and things like that, but I only did that for the first chapter, and girl, I didn't like taking notes in school. It makes me think I'm gonna take notes now. A good, I don't know, 3 years out of school. I'm not doing that. I just read it. I just went through it, and I'm just gonna tell you guys my thoughts and what I do remember and some key moments and things like that that stuck out to me. I'm not gonna say that there's things that I dislike about this book, because there isn't. To me, this is a great book that you can literally just get into if you're intrigued by Michael's life and process of music and his mindset and how his mindset was. And Michael had always, you know, expressed how his mindset worked and how his vision worked and things like that. But, you know, I feel like this book really dives into that as well, in that aspect, and I personally love that. I don't know about you, but I fucking love seeing behind the scenes stuff and the process of things. So, for example, behind the scenes, studio recording, behind the scenes, anything of that sort. So that's why when, you know, Stray Kids, for example, they release behind the scenes of their music videos, and sometimes they release behind the scenes of them actually recording their songs. And I love that. I love that candid stuff. And so when it comes to Michael, you know, Michael's no exception to that, especially when it's Michael, because Michael has such an interesting and really fun way of making music and his process. And I think it's a really interesting way of how he does things, because he would say, oh, the songs just fall into my lap. It's like they were already written in the universe and I'm the source. He's like, that's a beautiful thing. Hold on, let me fix my hip. Oh my God. And that's how he wrote. Like, that shit just came to him. And something in this book that really, like, got to me was that, you know, Motown 25, right? You know, we all, especially if you're a Michael Jackson fan, we all know Motown 25, Billie Jean. You know, him doing the moonwalk for the first time. He says, though he's been practicing the moonwalk for quite a while before then, you know, some kids had taught him it. You know, the whole routine, you know, the hat, the thrust, all, you know, the whole routine. He came up with that shit the night before the show. Or at least the tape recording, because they had recorded the show like a month in advance. But still, the night before the recording of the show, he came up with the whole fucking routine. To me, that is so fucking insane and so fucking impressive and so fucking cool. Because he said, okay, I want to do something for Billie Jean, right? So he went into the kitchen of his house, which I think at Havenhurst. He went to the kitchen, he blasted Billie Jean loud as hell, and in his fucking words, he let the, like, choreography and stuff just happen. Like, he just let it go through him. And to me, that is so, like, interesting, and that is so fucking cool. And he said, I already knew that I wanted to, you know, I wanted to display the moonwalk somehow, and Motown 25 was the perfect time to do that, since I had, you know, been practicing it for quite some time. And he said, I knew I wanted to do it at the bridge of the song. And he did. And so him coming up with that literally the night before is just so impressive, and it's so fucking cool that he just came up with that whole routine, the iconic Billie Jean routine, in one fucking night. Insane. So that's why I loved this book too, because it really showcased how he thought and how his mindset worked and how his worth ethic was. That stuff interests the hell out of me. I would get excited and I watched, like, almost automatically, or it just automatically catches my interest, where I would find that there's actually recording studio footage of him creating, like, of childhood, and They Don't Care About Us. And I'm sure there's more out there, but, like, especially childhood, because it shows him singing, and he said, this is my inspiration, and he fucking continues to show children and, like, just very cute stuff, and I'm like, you are literally the sweetest person I've ever seen in my entire life. It was very sweet, and it was also very cool and interesting to see him in a recording studio and how he worked. And I've always heard stories, and he even says himself in this book too, that obviously just for other people who worked with him in the studio, that he would turn off the lights. He wouldn't want anyone to see him record because, you know, he gets self-conscious and things like that, which real as hell, and he'd go insane with it. You know, he'd go insane. I just loved that. I just loved how he worked, how he wrote music, how he came up with choreography, just came up with his stuff, because he's also visionary, huge on that. So yeah, and that's kind of like the preface of the book, right? That's kind of like what the book is about. It's obviously it's about his life, but it also gives you behind the scenes look on how he worked, his mindset, and his thoughts on things, and kind of like a behind the scenes look on the songs he released during this time period, from Jackson 5 to Bad, because Bad had only come out the year prior of this book coming out, and something crazy is that, because this is actually the 2009 reissue, so it has words from, like, in the beginning it has words from Berry Gordy, and it also, and at the end it has words from, right, I think it's a her, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it is a, like, a couple pages excerpt, you know, story type deal. Shay Earhart, and she was the co-editor and things, like, she had a big hand in writing this book, right? Basically, she said that this book took 4 years to make. 4 fucking years. It took 4 fucking years to make, because she had expressed that though Michael was so, literally, he was so in it with everything else that he did, she was like, I wish I could say the same about the, you know, the book project, because, you know, though he was very interested in reading books and learning and things like that, you know, I guess he didn't seem as interested in actually creating one, which, very real. But that is not to say he didn't have a heavy hand in this, because what happened was Jackie and Shay, I think they're like the editors and things like that. I don't really know fully, but they sat Michael down. They sat Michael down eventually and got a tape recorder. They asked him questions. He told them stories and things like that, right? And then eventually that got transcribed. He read the transcriptions, edited them, things like that, and then all of that went through, and then finally gotten sent to an actual, like, writer, and then the manuscript and things like that got sent back. And, you know, Shay, she had visited Michael, because she needed Michael's approval, obviously, because this is his fucking book, this is his autobiography, you know what I mean? So she had gone to Australia to meet with Michael, because he was on the Bad Tour still, and he was going to Australia. Originally she wanted to meet him in Japan, but he was like, it's too hectic here, let's meet in Australia. That's what they did. So on the off days that he was not performing, that's what they did. She read him. At first she was like, okay, so do you just want to read it separately and then you stop me and let me know? And he kind of gave her like a and then she was like, or I could just read it to you and you stop me whenever. And he was like, yeah, let's do that. And that's what they did. And so he had a heavy hand. He tweaked things, and she listened, jotted down. So he had a heavy hand, even though he didn't write it himself. This was still his stories, this was still his feelings, and this was still his words, okay? So it wasn't like he was like, okay, here's a couple information for me, here's a lackluster information and write based off that. No. Michael had a heavy part to play and a heavy hand. So that's not to say that, so this is an autobiography, right? This is, okay? It's because it took 4 years to make, because he wasn't as, into making a book, as anything else he was interested in. Doesn't mean he had a big part to play. Don't get me twisted. Yeah, considering this took 4 years to make, it was still a good product at the end. And another little funny thing, is that once the book was completed, it was all edited, it was ready for press, right? It was ready to be pressed and released. Michael changed his mind, and he was like having second thoughts about the book, because he was like insecure a little bit. He didn't know if he was revealing too much. He was just very scared of the reception it may have gotten. Then eventually he did get over that, and he was like, okay, I'm fine, release it. Which I don't blame him for acting that way, because at this point in time, Michael hadn't really done anything like that. He hadn't revealed this much, even though this book, it does sugarcoat Joe's abuse and things like that, but we'll kind of get into that and my thoughts on that a little bit later. Even though Michael didn't reveal every inkling detail of his damn life, and that's what Shay said as well, is like, even though this is a book about him, he still kept stuff to himself, which is totally fucking fine. Like, he didn't need to reveal every little bit and piece. He just revealed, I feel like, the most important stuff, right? He didn't reveal anything too crazy, you know what I mean? He still freaked out about it, so that's because, again, he hadn't really revealed that, even because even though he has revealed a lot more darker and deeper and more in-depth stuff as time went on, at this point in time, considering Michael hadn't done really interviews or Michael hadn't really talked about himself or his life, this book was still a lot for him. It was a lot for him to reveal to the world because he was so fucking private. So to me, if he were to include how bad Joe's abuse was, I feel like he would have maybe even totally backed out of it, to be honest. Anyways, so that's that. Okay, so now I want to kind of talk about, I think, each chapter. If you came here, this is kind of late into the video already for me to say this, but if you came here to get an in-depth analysis on his autobiography, leave the video. Like, I had a brain fart, like, already about, 2 to 3 times already in the filming of this, so please, this is not the video. I'm sure there are deep analysis videos on YouTube. Go to those instead if you want a deep analysis, or better yet, just read the book. But if you can't read the book, then go to another more professional, well-spoken person. I'm just here to give my thoughts and my opinions and kind of a little, like, rundown on it, so don't expect too much from me. And something cute as well Shay revealed is that he wanted to make everyone, because here's this, right? That's the beginning. I mean, for the 2009 reissue, they did actually include Michael's drawing he made in 98, but this one was original, his signature as the beginning. He wanted to make everyone feel like they had a signed copy, and I think that's very cute. I think that's a very cute thing. And also, along with this book, there's a lot of nice photos in here. So every couple pages, there's just a bunch of photos. Chapter 1, Just Kids with a Dream. So chapter 1 is basically him laying down the woodwork on how his life was, where he grew up, where his mom and dad are from, how, you know, they grew up as, and things like that, right? Briefly, he's talking about where they worked and, you know, things like that, right? Obviously, throughout this chapter, he just talked about his family, basically. He talked about moments that are key. Like, obviously, he mentioned when Tito and even Jermaine and Jackie and stuff would mess with Joseph's guitar, and they weren't supposed to, and that even Catherine was like, I won't tell your father, just don't break it, okay? Don't break it, because she's cool like that. But then obviously, as we all know how the story goes, is that Tito breaks the string, and they didn't know what to do, and so they just put it back up in hopes that Joseph would think that it just broke by itself. But obviously, Joseph didn't buy that. And Michael, in this book, he didn't say that Joseph whooped Tito. He didn't say that, even though that is what happened. Michael just said that Tito was crying because he was scared to fucking death. I wonder why. Again, it kind of sugarcoats, but that Joseph kind of like scolded him, or just straight up was just like, okay then, show me what you got. And that's what Tito, and then that's when Tito showed him what he got and things like that. And, you know, again, like, and here's my other side tangent here about Michael sugarcoating Joseph's abuse. I will say that Michael did mention that he was strict and he was hard, and that Michael didn't know Joseph as well as he wanted to, because, you know, that's your father. You want to know your father. You want to be close to your father. He did mention that Joseph was never affectionate or anything like that they had to call him Joseph. You know, he did mention those things. Like, I'm not saying that he made Joseph out to be some nice guy and that he's the nicest person in the world. But we all know that Joseph was abusive, you know, literally every kind of abusive there was. And then Michael would later reveal this. So, but he doesn't really, I think, to my memory, if anything, he did mention that they would get whooped. He either did that or didn't mention that at all, but I don't remember, so I'm not going to say in full conviction. But what he did do was sugarcoat it. Again, like I was kind of getting on earlier, is that I don't blame Michael for sugarcoating it, because one, it's really none of our business what really happened back in Gary, Indiana, okay? What really fucking happened. It was never our business, okay? So, and plus, this book was already revealing as is, so I'm sure he didn't want to throw his dad really under the bus in that way and make him out to seem some monster or whatever. So he kind of just sugarcoated it a little bit, which again, I don't blame him for doing that, because at the end of the day, he did eventually say how bad it really was. Okay, we did eventually find out the full truth of things, the full scale of things. But I really do love the contrast of how he was in this book. He was just so speaking highly of Catherine, and it was the sweetest thing, because Michael truly is a mama's boy. Like, he was a mama's boy, and I think that is the sweetest thing. He would constantly just praise how amazing she was and how attentive she was, and he even expressed that, like, even though she had 9 kids, you know, she still treated each of them as if they were the only kid, you know, and she would be very attentive and very supportive of their interests and things like that. So, and Michael gave the examples, like, okay, I'll be into movie stars. She would literally bring back a bunch of books and things about movies and movie stars and things like that. And she was very caring for them, and, you know, and he would also express that, you know, most people and you know, some kids, you know, depend on other people for that parental attention and love. And he was like, we never had to really go for anybody else when it came to our mom. You know what I mean? Like, she always gave us that parental love and care and, you know, things like that. And I think that's so amazing. But with Joe, he was like, he gave Joe his flowers, you know, and recognized things, but he was not as uplifting and praising with Joe, which is completely understandable. Like, I wouldn't either. And plus, there's not much to praise with him, because again, he abused them, and he did even give them affection. So it's like, and here's my thing with that briefly, that, like, I can give Joe his flowers to an extent. Like, the only thing I really am thankful for with Joe is that at least his kids didn't turn to drugs or gang violence or anything like that. Like, I'm glad that that's, you know, a lot of the Black community really loved the Jackson 5, because it's like, wow, they made it out, you know. So they were like a huge inspiration in the Black community especially, and, you know, I really love that aspect, you know. I feel like the negatives outweigh the positives, in my opinion. That, to me, you could have gotten your kids out and, you know, doing music and stuff without the amount of force and abuse that you did put upon them. Sorry, not sorry, because Michael, especially after experiencing that, Michael even wrote notes. He's like, discipline with love, not violence. He wrote that with his own handwriting, and Michael did do that. He never laid a fucking finger on his kids. For example, like, if the kids did good, or they passed a test or an exam, he would treat them to the movies, or Neverland rides, or snacks, whatever the fuck, right? Toys, whatever. But if they failed a test or they were bad, they would get scolded, or they would just not. He was like, okay, well, we won't go to the movies. Okay, you won't go on the ride, you know, or go to your room, think about whatever. Like, he would give him a stern scold, right? And that worked. Oh, who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? And I think that's incredible to do. I understand that, especially back then, you know, disciplining your kids by hitting them is normal, and it still is normalized. You know, I personally wouldn't do it, but to me, there's a difference between spanking your kids out of discipline and straight up abusing them. And straight up abusing them was what Joe was doing, because not only did he physically abuse them, he mentally abused them. So, and he would bully Michael. And, you know, I already mentioned this in the last video, but so, you know, again, personally, I wouldn't hit my kids as discipline, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you what and what not to do with your kids, as long as you're not, like, abusing them. But anyways, so that's that. And so basically Michael would continue to eventually be part of the group, and they would all do some gigs. They would do talent shows, and then eventually clubs, and then they would even do stuff outside of Gary, like Chicago and things like that, right? Michael told stories about the nightclubs and things like that. There's this one funny moment where he was at one of the nightclubs, right, and he was on the wings side of the stage or whatever, I guess backstage. I assume that's what that is. In the book, he described this woman to be so beautiful, you know, things like that. And then at the end of her performance, she took off her wig, took oranges out of her bra, and to reveal that it was a drag queen. And Michael, especially at the time, because he was a kid, he had never seen anything like that. He was so shook. He was like, oh. He was very shook about it, and I think that was a little funny moment. So basically, we all know the experience, them in the nightclubs. He would experience seeing strippers and things like that. It was a whole thing. And obviously he would experience his brothers banging girls and things like that. So, but I feel like that would mostly come later when they became like big in the Jackson 5 and they toured and stuff. So yeah, in this first chapter, he just explains, you know, how they became the Jackson 5 before they signed onto Motown. Again, I'm not going to go into depth because this is something you should read, you know, something you should, or if you want an in-depth analysis summary, I'm sure there's some on YouTube or on Google. Like, I'm not the person to go to that. And then eventually they got offered to get signed onto Motown because they would start performing at like the Apollo and shit like that, right? And they were actually going to got offered to go perform on television, but Joseph canceled it because Motown called. So that was even fucking better. That's where the chapter 1 kind of ends off on. But yeah, very, very cute. Very cute pictures. Okay, so chapter 2 is called The Promised Land, and so this is where they start kicking the hell off, right? Long story short, they signed on to Motown, right? We all know this story. They signed on to Motown, and Berry Gordy loved them at their audition, but, you know, of course, Berry was very hesitant at first because, you know, they had already dealt with Stevie Wonder, who was a kid, and they didn't want to deal with it. Thankfully, they gave them a chance, and Berry ate his fucking words, and he was like, I love them, we're signing them, we're doing it. It was crazy because he promised them 3 hit records, but with I'll Be There, they exceeded his expectations. The 4 hit records that came up of the Jackson 5, when they first debuted and stuff, was I Want You Back, The Love You Save, ABC, and I'll Be There. I think those are the 4 records that hit number 1 like automatically, right? The Jackson 5 was fucking kicking off, right? They were kicking off, they were slaying. Motown kind of had to train them too, right? It's almost kind of like, you know, public training, you know? They had to train them on the questions they'd be asked, and, you know, what they'd wear, what they sing. Because again, the Jackson 5, they were kids, right? The oldest was Jackie. I don't even know how old he was at this time, but they were all kids, right? And so they didn't have much control over anything, and that kind of, and that's kind of like a theme, a reoccurring theme that happens throughout this book, is that Michael is very keen on control and he wants to take over control. It's kind of like similar to Janet in a ways, that she wanted to take control over her life and stuff, and did. Like, look how precious this little boy is. Like, I can't. Like, he's so cute. You know, he talks about Suzanne DePast. She managed them and was very friendly with them, very nice with them, and, you know, things like that. Motown people tested us on the answers to questions we hadn't heard from anyone yet. They tested us on grammar, the table manners, when we were ready. They brought us in for the last alterations on our sleeves and trimming of our new afros. So basically, you know, they would test them, even in their little transformation to become the Jackson 5, you know? And yeah, this chapter basically kind of talks about the making and, you know, the process of the hit records that they produced. Not Jackson 5 produced, but that came up of it. My appearance began to really change when I was about 14. I grew quite a bit in height, People who didn't know me would come into my room expecting to be introduced to cute little Michael Jackson, and they'd walk right past me. I would say, "I'm Michael," and they would look doubtful. Michael was a cute little kid. I was a gangly adolescent heading toward 5 feet and 10 inches. And Michael obviously has mentioned the struggles of changing and the changes that he was, really going through during this time. His voice dropping, him growing taller, his face changing, him getting acne, and he was so fucking insecure about that. Like, oh my gosh, it's very sad to very, very, very sad to see or read. It was even sad to hear when we would hear Michael say it, like in interviews and things like that. Like he wouldn't look in the mirror, none of it. He does mention that, and again, kind of, I guess, tying in with the sugarcoating Joe, like he never mentions Joe bullying him. Again, I'm not blaming Michael for not sharing that. He talks about his first solo album and single, Ben, and things like that. So that's kind of like basically chapter 2. Chapter 2 is basically just them becoming Jackson 5. Michael dealing with changes and them dealing with the fame, I guess, or not dealing with the fame, but I guess them recording their hit singles and things like that, getting in the groove of it. So, and then chapter 3 is called Dancing Machine. From the get-go, Michael talks about, I'll read an excerpt. The media write weird stuff about me all the time. The distortion of the truth bothers me. I usually don't read a lot of what is printed, although I often hear about it. I don't understand why they feel the need to make up things about me. I suppose if there's nothing scandalous to report, it's necessary to make things interesting. I take some small pride in thinking that I've come out pretty well, all things considered. A lot of children in the entertainment business ended up doing drugs and destroying themselves. Frankie Lehman, Bobby Driscoll, I don't know how to pronounce any of these damn names. Any of the number of child stars, and I can understand their turning to drugs, considering the enormous stresses put on them at a young age. It's a difficult life. Very few manage to maintain any semblance of a normal childhood. I myself have never even tried drugs. No marijuana, no cocaine, nothing. I mean, I haven't even tried these things. Forget it. And then he just continues to say, oh, we were obviously offered and tempted, but, never did it. He said, I don't mean to be judgmental. It's not even a moral issue for me, but I've seen drugs destroy too many lives to think they're anything to fool with. I'm certainly no angel, and I may have my own bad habits, but drugs aren't among them. Reading that kind of makes me, because it's like this came out in 1988. Sure, Michael had taken painkillers and things like that, but I feel like to a normal amount. It wasn't anything too extreme, but then obviously, as life goes on, yeah, but we're not really going to get too deep into that because that's not what this is about, right? I'm not going to go on tangent. It's already 47 minutes long in real time, and I'm going to try my best not to make it so long. It's very unfortunate to see, and of course, Michael, one thing I am happy about is that he didn't, lean to cocaine and heroin and things like that, because that shit can really fuck you up. But also prescription drugs can as well. I feel like they can be just as bad if you abuse them, which Michael did. He didn't see it that way. He saw prescription drugs, as safer because, they're prescribed to him and by a doctor. And he trusted doctors so fucking immensely. And he believed, well, they're under oath, they can't hurt me, but sweetie, you're Michael Jackson. I feel like they'll do anything for something, So I feel like there's very few doctors that were actually real ones. Again, I digress, I digress. If you want to, kind of go deeper into that rabbit hole in his touring life and things like that, I recommend watching Hannah Savage's This Is It docuseries. She only has part 1 and 2 out right now. I haven't finished part 2 yet, but part 1 really dives into his drug thing, financial, all of that. So I recommend if you want to get deeper into that. So it's kind of just talking about more tracks they produce, things like that. And this is the chapter where they were all like, we want to leave Motown because we want control of our own music. We want to have that freedom because we're all sick. It's not just me. It's literally all the brothers who are sick of being told what to sing, what to do, things like that. And Michael had also expressed in this chapter, I believe, that they had done like a show, either this chapter or the next chapter, but that they done a show. I think it was like, I don't know what show it was, but it was a show, and Michael had expressed he fucking hated doing that shit. Like, he didn't like TV, right? He didn't like doing that stuff because he felt like it was a mistake and that no one was going to take them seriously afterwards. It's just not, because like, we are musicians, like, we are not a comedy act. He fucking hated doing that show. Oh my god, he hated it. And I don't blame him, and I understand where he's coming from, because it's like, that's what happened. The sales for the Jackson 5 or whatever weren't as great as they used to be, and things like that. So, and especially with this show, it didn't help nothing, you know what I mean? It certainly didn't help anything. So yeah, he had a disdain for that show and doing TV in general. Like, he didn't want to do Motown 25 because of that. He's like, I don't want to do a TV show. He also talks about The Wiz and how he auditioned, I guess, I forgot who recommended him to audition. Either Diana Ross auditioned for the Scarecrow, because he's like, I feel like that's the only character that was fitting for me. And so The Wiz is kind of where his love for film and movies really started to grow, because he loved it. He loved being put in makeup because, again, he was still very insecure about his appearance and things like that. So he loved putting on that fucking makeup. He loved it. So basically, chapter 3 is just about more of their Motown experience, and also just them leaving Motown and Michael talking about The Wiz and things like that. And then chapter 4 is called Me and Q, which is him and Quincy Jones. They had met prior to The Wiz, but I feel like they got even closer during The Wiz. Basically how they met was that Michael had to pull out a quote from his straw and read it. The author's name, Socrates, was printed at the end. I had read Socrates, but I had never pronounced his name, so I said Socrates, or something like that. I think that's how he was pronouncing it, because that's the way I had always assumed it was pronounced. There was a moment's silence before I heard someone whisper, Socrates. I looked over at this man I vaguely recognized. He was not one of the actors, but he seemed to belong there. I remember thinking he looked very self-confident and had a friendly face. I smiled a little embarrassed at having mispronounced the name and thanked him for his help. His face was naggingly familiar, and I was suddenly sure that I had met him before. He confirmed my suspicions by extending his hand. Quincy Jones, I'm doing the score. So that's basically how they met. They met because Quincy corrected his ass, which I be pronouncing shit wrong all the fucking time, I already know. Basically, chapter 4 is basically talking about him and Quincy Jones' relationship, right, throughout the late 70s and 80s. After The Wiz, I called him and said, look, I'm going to do an album. Do you think you could recommend some producers? I wasn't hinting. My question was naive, but an honest one. So basically, they talked for a while and things like that, because Michael wasn't hinting at, be my producer, but he was just being, like, genuine, like, hey, I want to, do you have any recommendations? And then eventually, Quincy was like, hey, I can do it. Why don't you just let me? And then Michael was like, oh, I never thought about that. Yeah. And so that's what, and basically the rest of this is kind of like the process of making Off the Wall. And they even made a little company called Peacock Productions, because Michael really liked the concept of peacock, because he read an article about a peacock and he was really excited about, the characteristics of it. I was excited. I thought I might have found an image we were looking for. It was an in-depth piece, a little dry in places, but interesting. The writer said that the peacock's full plumage would explode only when it was in love, and then the colors would shine, but all the colors of the rainbow on one body. And so he was immediately taken by that beautiful image and the meaning behind it. That word's plumage conveyed the message I was looking for to explain the Jacksons and our intense devotion to one another. as well as our multifaceted interests. My brothers liked the idea, so we called our new company Peacock Productions to sidestep the trap of relying too heavily on the Jackson name. So yeah, so basically they even made a company and everything like that. So Michael was still in the Jacksons while he created Off the Wall with Quincy and things like that. So this chapter is basically just talking about the creation of Off the Wall and the creation of even Jackson songs, because again, Michael was still in the Jacksons, so it was kind of like a double whammy type deal. And he has explained that, you know, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough he had written by himself as a whole, and that it was his first big chance, and it went straight to number 1, which slay. It was the song that won me my first Grammy. Quincy had the confidence in me to encourage me to go into the studio by myself, which I appreciated. Then he added strings, which put the icing on the cake. And Michael also kind of briefly segues into talking about his love life, which I was really interested in because I'm nosy as hell, I'm not gonna lie. Because he was talking about She's Out of My Life. It was personal for me. Sometimes it's hard for me to look my dates in the eye if I know them well. My dating and relationships with girls have not had a happy ending I've been looking for. Something always seems to get in the way. The things I share with millions of people aren't the sort of things you share with one. Many girls want to know what makes me tick, why I live the way I live, or do the things I do, trying to get inside my head. They want to rescue me from loneliness, but they do it in such a way that they give me the impression they want me to share my loneliness, which I wouldn't wish on anybody, because I believe I'm one of the loneliest people in the world. And then after a few more words and things like that about other songs, he kind of goes back into the girlfriend situation. He said, I didn't really have any girlfriends when I was in school. There were girls I thought were cute, but I found it difficult to approach them. He's so fucking real. I was too embarrassed. I don't know why. It was just crazy. He's so fucking real. There was this one girl who was a good friend to me. I liked her, but I was too embarrassed to tell her. And then he kind of talks about Tatum O'Neal a little bit, how they would talk and their dates. And something very cute that I really like and very charming, and that he also told Rabbi Shmuley in those tapes and stuff, is that Tatum had actually held his hand underneath a table, and man, he melted like he was on top of the fucking world. To him, that sort of connection meant the world to him, not sex or not kissing or any of that bullshit. Like, just a simple, like, handhold, like, that meant everything to him, and I think that's the sweetest thing ever. And something that I really, really love, it's bare minimum as hell, but I really love this quote a lot. There have been a lot of wonderful women in my life, women whose names wouldn't mean anything to the readers of this book, and it would be unfair to discuss them because they are not celebrities and are unaccustomed to having their names in print. I value my privacy, and therefore I respect theirs as well. Like, period, Michael. Like, period. Like, I just love that quote because he's like, there's been a lot of women that I really loved and that were really wonderful in my life, but since they're not, you know, they're not used to fame or anything like that, so I'm just gonna respect their privacy, period. And he also kind of talks about, towards the end of chapter 4, he talks about how Off the Wall, though it did sell like 6 million copies, it was very successful. The fans fucking loved it. People went berserk over it. He had only received 1 nomination for the Grammy, and although Off the Wall had been one of the most popular records of the year, it received only 1 nomination, Best R&B Vocal Performance. And he said he felt ignored by his peers and hurt. People told me later that it surprised the industry too. I was disappointed, and then I got excited thinking about the album to come. I said to myself, wait until next time. They won't be able to ignore the next album. And did. And people did not ignore that next album, girl. He felt robbed, he felt a little robbed that, because he was like, I put a lot of fucking blood, sweat, and tears for this album, and a lot of people loved it, so what the hell? Because of this, he was determined to make the next album even fucking greater. And that leads into chapter 5 called The Moonwalk. And he just talks about how he truly believes that wishes can come true, but we make them come true. You know what I mean? By hard work and dedication and things like that, And he's like, a wish is more than a wish. It's a goal. It's something your conscious and subconscious can make reality. And I cannot agree with that even fucking more. Even as a child, he's always wanted to have an album being like one of his albums be one of the best-selling ones of all time, and did. It was crazy because when he, expressed that he wanted Thriller to be the best-selling album of all time, people kind of laughed in his face and was like, okay, yeah, right, buddy. And basically this chapter is the same, kind of this, not the same deal, but kind of like he talks about the process of Thriller, and he talks about, process of the songs, how he felt during the process, all of that. Like, he gets into it. He even talks about Paul McCartney. They had met years prior, and Paul McCartney was like, let's get together, write some hits. But they had never actually gotten to it, and then until Thriller came up, and then Michael hit him up and was like, hey, let's actually do that. And so they came up with Say, Say, Say and The Girl Is Mine. And The Girl Is Mine became the first single. And then Michael also gets into the music publishing business and things like that, and he talks about that, and he says and emphasizes that, hey, Paul actually got me into that because he told me about it. And therefore he bought the ATV music publishing catalog, which included the Beatles songs. And then he talks about the creation of Billie Jean and things like that. And he also exposes some of these fucking girls, weird ass people. Like he said, there was never a real Billie Jean, and in parentheses, except for the ones who came after the song, which made me giggle. This kind of thing happened to some of my brothers, and I used to be really amazed by it. I couldn't understand how these girls could say they were carrying someone's child when it wasn't true. I can't imagine lying about something like that. Even today, there are girls who come to the gate at our house and say the strangest things, like, oh, I'm Michael's wife, or I'm just dropping off the keys to our apartment, which is so fucking insane. Like, holy fuck. Like, oh my god. I remember one girl who used to drive us completely crazy. I really think that she believed in her mind that she belonged with me. There was another girl who claimed I had gone to bed with her, and she made threats. There have been a couple of serious scuffles at the gate on Havenhurst, and they can get dangerous. People yell into the intercom that Jesus sent them to speak with me, and God told them to come. Unusual and unsettling things. So, yeah, he exposed the hell out of that. And another thing is that he expressed that the company was rushing them. Yeah, they were rushing the creation of Thriller. So basically, Michael was not happy about that because Michael was a fucking perfectionist, and he even explained, chapters prior about the Wiz and stuff. He's like, I love musicals and plays and stuff, but I could never be in one because I'm just such a perfectionist that I can't do that in like one take. You know what I mean? I have to do things over and over again. The rush of it led it to sound awful in Michael's ears, and even I think to even Quincy Jones and stuff like that, but especially in Michael's ears, he's like, this shit sounds awful. It sounds rushed. It was not mixed properly. It was not good. I cannot release this. And so he was even to the point where he was straight up like, okay, we're not releasing Thriller. Like, this shit is ass. Like, we're not doing this. Like, no. So eventually, like, Michael expressed that there was a lot of screaming and yelling and arguing and things like that, but eventually the company and stuff got the hint and got the idea and was like, fine, I agree. It was very rushed and that. So then they had to do the mixing and all of that shit all over again. So once they were finally done, they took their time, they remixed everything. They could hear the difference. They can hear the difference in quality and everything. So Billie Jean was actually the only short film that he made that was paid by the company, CBS, and Thriller and Beat It was out of his own pocket because he didn't want to risk them screwing with his vision. So, like I said prior, Michael had a disdain of doing television and things like that. So, he wasn't originally going to do Motown. He didn't want to do Motown 25, but then Berry Gordy talked to him and things like that. And, he was like, fine, but I want to do Billie Jean. And that's where I told you that Michael came up with Billie Jean routine in one fucking night. So, that's just awesome. Cool. The night before the taping, I still had no idea what I was going to do with my solo number. So I went down to the kitchen of our house and played Billie Jean loud. I was in there by myself the night before the show, and I pretty much stood there and let the song tell me what to do. I kind of let the dance create itself. I really let it talk to me. I heard the beat come on, and I took the spice hat and started to pose and step, letting the Billie Jean rhythm create the movement. I almost felt compelled to let it create itself. So to me, that is so fucking insane to me. That's insane that he came up with the whole routine and dance number in one night before the recording. Insane to me. And he had also mentioned a few chapters prior, again with the Wiz, Michael would also explain that when he sees something, he can automatically process it and do it. And so when he would be taught, dance numbers for the Wiz, he would automatically just do exactly what was being shown and taught, while the other co-stars would have some trouble, or they would have to constantly, redo it or whatever. And then even Diana Ross took him aside. He's like, you are embarrassing me because you're just doing this shit while, you're just going, you're so quick to learn this stuff. Like, what the hell? And when they came back, he kind of like made him getting it automatically a little less obvious to not, but that also is so fucking cool to me, that Michael can just look at something and automatically absorb it and just do it. And to me, that's so fucking impressive. That's so cool, because I could never. And as we know, Michael wasn't satisfied with Motown 25. He wanted to spin and land on his tiptoes, and just freeze there, but he wasn't able to do that, and so he was very disappointed by that. But when he got a compliment by this little kid, he said, oh, whoever taught you to dance like that, he was like, oh, that was the best compliment I could ever receive. Like, that's how I know I did a good job, because children don't lie, and he felt really good about himself after he got that compliment from the little kid. And then he got a call by Fred Astaire, which is one of Michael's inspirations, and Fred Astaire gave Michael huge fucking praises. He's like, you're one hell of a mover, like, oh my god, like. And then that also meant a lot to Michael too. And Michael kind of like touches on his fashion and stuff. He said that he always had the one glove. He thought one glove was not boring and was always looked cooler, and he had always rocked the white socks, even when people were literally like, I would not be caught dead wearing this shit, and his brothers would tease him and stuff like that. And Jermaine would even call up Catherine and be like, Michael's wearing the white socks, like, do something about it. And eventually, when Michael was popping off from Motown 25 and stuff, he was like, oh, all of a sudden people want to wear white socks. Michael was like, I couldn't help but think that he got popular again to be out of spite for Jermaine, so that's really fun. And so yeah, I think he talks more about the Thriller process, and once it actually won 8 fucking Grammys.
I made a deal with myself. If I win one more award, which is this award, which is 7, which is a record.
They celebrated, they hooted and they hollered and they brought out champagne. Like, they fucking celebrated. And Michael's wish fucking came true, that he got the biggest selling album of all time. He got fucking 8 Grammys, dude.
Which is a record.
And, he was just really that fucking bitch. He was just really that bitch. He also paved the way, for black artists and stuff like that. Being the first black artist to really go on MTV. He paved the way in so many ways, dude. In so many ways. And so then he continues to express that, especially after Thriller, he was, he was more in the public eye. And so he kind of became more of a private recluse, private person, didn't really go out that much. He was still very shy about his appearance, and and he expresses that when he was younger, his diet wasn't great, and so eventually he became a vegetarian. He got better with eating, and he lost weight, and he especially lost weight in his face. And that's when people were accusing him of doing plastic surgery, and Michael does touch on this. And so I guess to make a long story short, Michael, during this time, he admitted to having 2 nose surgeries and put a cleft in his chin. So here's my little other tangent here about Michael's surgeries that he has had. To me, I feel like that man has not done nothing to his face other than his nose and the cleft chin. Like, y'all are, because to me, y'all are just doing way too fucking much. Y'all are doing way too fucking much thinking this man did a whole fucking reconstructive on his face. Like, no, girl. Like, Michael, to me, has looked the same throughout his entire fucking life, other than his nose. Like, in my personal opinion. And I feel like his very first nose surgery was after he broke his nose, and so maybe Michael didn't consider that one like a purposeful nose job, so I think that's why he probably didn't count. Maybe he didn't count that in the book, so he said, I got 2 nose jobs and the cleft chin, right? Because he definitely got another one after the very first one, and that was like Thriller era, and then Bad, because Thriller era nose job and the Bad era nose job is obviously a lot different. And here's my thing with this. I think Michael told a white lie to Martin Bashir when he said he only had like 2 to 3 nose jobs. Sorry guys, my recording got cut off because it said storage. But as I was saying, I'm gonna try to wrap this up, y'all. I'm sorry I said I wasn't gonna drag this out, but I clearly am, so I never believe anything I say. Just kidding. But basically what I was saying is that I feel like Michael, to me, had every right to tell a white lie, because to me it's like, his appearance and his medical history and his thing and all of that stuff is none of our fucking business. It's definitely none of any of the journalists or interviewers' damn fucking business, right? So to me, it's like, I'm not even mad at Michael for telling Martin Bashir and things like that he only got like 2 fucking nose surgeries, because we all know that's not true, okay? And again, that's totally fine for Michael to say otherwise. That's, to me, that's just my opinion. Because it's none of your damn business. Because I think maximum nose surgeries that man has had was maybe 5 or 6. Maximum, and that's maximum. And hell, even 6 is probably pushing it. But even with half of his fucking nose surgeries was because of lupus, right? Because with lupus, you know, it was connected to his vitiligo, and having like surgery scars on your nose and stuff, and just surgery scars in general, doesn't really mesh well with lupus. And so obviously in result to that, he would try to get that fixed up, therefore making his nose smaller. And so some of it wasn't even because he just, I want to get another surgery. Yes, one part of it was because he was insecure about his nose and he wanted to get it done. Yes, that is still very true. That doesn't mean it's not true. But I feel like the other half of the truth of the matter is because he had lupus, and, you know, he wanted to look as, like, normal as he possibly could. So, that's not really his fucking fault. So, yeah, and again, if you want to dive more into that as well, the Hannah Savage's docuseries on This Is It also covers that in, like, part 1 and stuff. So, again, go check it out. And then, obviously, the cleft chin. And now, I do believe that man has only gotten the cleft chin, like, 1 time, because I feel like as later as his life progressed and stuff, and you would see it very deep and dark and stuff, I feel like that was all makeup. That was all makeup, and also just a result of him getting older, so it's gonna look a little more deeper, naturally, you know what I mean? So to me, it's not even a debate, it's not even that big of a deal. So to me, the only surgeries that man has gotten, like, on his face was his nose and his chin. Because Michael had always had very prominent cheekbones, especially when he was thinner, right? He had always had prominent cheekbones, he had always had prominent chin, like, it was always very prominent. And then his eyes always looked the same. His eyebrows always look the same. It's all fucking makeup, y'all. It is all fucking makeup, and the fact that Michael was just getting older. Point blank, period, okay? Nothing more and nothing fucking less. Y'all act like Michael was so fucking obsessed with getting surgery. Like, girl. And so, this is one of the quotes that I really love, because you better tell him, Michael, you better tell him. I'd like to set the record straight right now. I have never had my cheeks altered or my eyes altered. I have not had my lips thinned, nor have I had dermabrasion or skin peel. All of these charges are ridiculous. If they were true, I would say so, but they aren't. I have had my nose altered twice, and I recently had it a cleft to my chin, but that is it, period. I don't care what anyone else says. It's my face, and I know. You better fucking tell him. You better fucking tell him. Again, this was before Michael had gotten another nose surgery, so he was telling the truth, you know what I mean? That he only had gotten his nose done twice, and the cleft in his chin. Another facts he's speaking here is, I don't understand why the press is so interested in speculating about my appearance anyway. What does my face have to do with my music or my dancing? Again, period. And Michael does mention that people were accusing him of becoming white, and he was like, what kind of shit is that? And he's like, what kind of question, what kind of statement is that? And during this time, he hadn't told anyone that he had vitiligo and stuff, and again, he did not owe us that information. So to me, I don't blame him for not telling anybody, especially in this book. He didn't say nothing about vitiligo. Like, literally the first time ever he told anybody, the world, about vitiligo was on Oprah. I do think, though, that eventually he was gonna have to say that he had vitiligo, because obviously he wasn't getting any darker. So in my opinion, I feel like, though, I'm glad Michael took his time in telling people he had vitiligo, because one, it's not an easy thing to tell your fans and just the world that you have a skin disorder. The constant fear of being like judged, not being believed, or just even getting scrutinized even more, I could understand that mindset, because that was Michael's mindset. He thought a lot, and me too. I get that. And also it ties in with his plastic surgery shit. It's none of anybody's business. That's his own personal diagnosis. That's his personal medical history and medical stuff. And, that stuff isn't really meant to be exposed like that, especially back then and stuff. So, and Michael even tried to hide his vitiligo from Karen Faye, who did his makeup and stuff like that, and he would hide it from a lot of people until eventually it just got very extensive and you couldn't just hide it anymore. So I am glad that eventually he told the world, because I think eventually he would have had to just be like, hey, it's not because I want to be white. That's fucking absurd. It's because I have a fucking skin disorder and I can't control that. So during this time period, I can't really blame people for speculating and automatically just going to, well, he wants to be white or he wants to be lighter, because no one really knew why he was becoming more lighter. No one. Only Michael knew, and he didn't want to expose that. Though people need to mind their damn business, I also don't blame them for speculating. You know what I mean? And the very last chapter is called All You Need Is Love. It starts off, he said, I planned to spend most of 84 working on movie ideas I had, but those plans got sidetracked. Now, I kind of also want to talk a little bit about how I really, really wish that Michael had the opportunity to make, like, a full-fledged, like, film that he wanted to. Yes, he done short films for music, he starred in movies and things like that. He did an anthology film and things like that, but I feel like I would have loved to see him in a film and produce a film, or even act in an actual film, because that's what he really wanted to do. That was another dream of his, and I really wish he would have been able to do so, but, people got in the way, and it really pisses me off, because that's what he really wanted to do, he really wanted to do that. But this chapter does start off by him talking about the Pepsi commercial incident. Yay! He said, we did several takes that were wonderfully filmed. The lighting effects from the bombs were great. Only later did I find out that these bombs were only 2 feet away from either side of my head, which was a total disregard of the safety regulations. I was supposed to stand in the middle of the magnesium explosion, 2 feet on either side. But then the director had told him that Michael was going down way too early and to basically wait because he wanted to see Michael. Michael did was told, and so therefore the incident happened. Initially, Jermaine thought that he got shot by the audience because it was filmed by a live studio audience. Jermaine thought he got shot, which thank God he didn't. But honestly, I don't know what's fucking worse, getting shot or getting your hair caught on fucking fire. But I can only imagine being in the audience and seeing that Michael Jackson's hair got caught on fire. Like, I would have been very stunned. I would have been like, what the fuck just happened? Like, I would have been, hey, yo, what the hell? But even though he was in pain, he was just totally detached from everything. And, they told him he was in shock, but he does remember really enjoying the ride in the ambulance. That he's always wanted to do that. So at least he found some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. What I also found really funny is that when Michael found out there was news people, he asked for his glove. That shit, to me, that shit is so funny. I don't know why. But basically, the doctors were telling his ass, hey, bitch, this was a fucking miracle you lived, because usually the clothes will catch on fire and your face can get fucking disfigured. So it is such a miracle that you are alive. And It was a miracle. I'm glad he was alive. Though he was in chronic pain for literally the rest of his damn life, at least, you know, he was alive. But the description of that, like, of the fire almost reaching his skull cringes me out so bad because, oh. But what fucking gets me, though, is that even after this fucking incident, and Michael said in the book that he saw the people in at Pepsi low-key freaking the fuck out because they didn't know what was gonna happen. But yet they still fucking, like, released the commercial. And so, once they released the commercial, and everybody knew about this incident, that was the most sales of Pepsi they have ever fucking gotten in their entire fucking lifetime as Pepsi. I don't know. To me, that's just so scummy. Like, that is just low-key really scummy that you still released the commercial after everything and y'all got major fucking profit off of that.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
But at least they compensated, I don't know, I'm stupid. Compensated, Michael a lot of fucking money. They gave him, I think, 1.5 million bucks, bucks, like it's just chump change. $1.5 million to, you know, and Michael said, he's like, I could have sued, but I didn't. I was real nice about it. Real nice. And to me, that's really petty and that's really fun. I love that. I love Michael. I really do. He's fun. But he automatically used that to a burn center, the Michael Jackson burn center, which helped him and which helped other burn victims and things like that. So literally all of that went towards something good. So then he continues to talk about the victory tour. He said he didn't want to do it, right? He said, I don't want to do this shit because you can only imagine, one, you just came out of a traumatic event, for one, and for two, Michael's riding the high of Thriller, and also, he just wants to do his own thing, so you can only imagine being in a situation like, I don't want to do this. But he was like, well, he thought it wasn't a wise thing to do, but his brothers wanted him to do it, and so he was like, fine, I'll do it for you. But if I'm gonna do this tour, I might as well just put my whole Buddhisty into it, and so that's what he did. He expressed during this point that, you know, people didn't really see him as human, and that kind of whole spiel, which I totally agree with. He wasn't really proud of the victory tour. He was like, I feel like I didn't touch people the way I wanted to touch people. He just wasn't proud of really his performances or anything like that. He just wasn't really proud of the victory tour, you know, but he also does express that he did have a good time on the victory tour when he did have a good time. You know, of course he was stressed and he wasn't really proud of it, but, you know, he loved being with his brothers again. According to Michael, I'm not just assuming, according to Michael, he enjoyed being with his brothers again. And, you know, even though he initially didn't want to do it, but it wasn't all too bad. It wasn't all too bad of an experience. But yeah, he was expressing that, you know, the fans were wonderful, they all loved it, but he was like, it was the perfectionist that came out of him that was like, well, I didn't have time to perfect anything, like, I didn't, you know, I wasn't proud of my Billie Jean performance, I wasn't proud of any of that. There have been times right before the show where certain things were bothering me, business or personal problems. I would think, I don't know how to go through this, I don't know how I'm going to go through the show, I can't perform like this, but once I get on the side of the stage, something happens. The rhythm starts and the lights hit me and the problems disappear. This has happened so many times. The thrill of performing just takes over. When Michael performs, when Michael gets on that stage, he fucking loves it. It's a really good high for him, and, you know, it really makes all his fucking problems disappear, and so at least that's a good aspect of that. And Michael also expressed how much he was a prankster, and I mean, we all know this. Again, if you're a Michael Jackson fan, we all know that Michael was a huge fucking prankster, from word of mouth by his closest friends, his family. Like, he was such a prankster. Even Michael himself, you know, he's a huge fucking prankster and a huge child in that way. So he would also express how, even back then, he would do pranks with his brothers and pull pranks on other people, and even, you know, during Victory Tour, he'd do the same thing. He'd fuck with Frank DeLeo and Bill Bray and things like that, and it was very fun. It's very fun to read and very cute to read and imagine and just be like, wow, that's really fun and very cute. I like those cute little moments as well. Crazy, by the way, that Michael, like, showed Frank DeLeo his boa constrictor, aka Muscles, and Frank freaked the fuck out, and Michael had a kick out of that. And then eventually Frank pulled out his gun and he was gonna shoot Muscles. Like, what the hell? And then eventually he calmed down. Bro, if Frank would have shot Muscles, Frank would have been fired. Like, I'm pretty sure he would have been so fucking fired. He would have been so fucking cooked if he shot Muscles, man. That's muscle. And that's another thing I really love about Michael, is that he really appreciates the small, beautiful things. He thinks everything is beautiful. He thinks everything is so wonderful, and I think that's such a fun. I love that. I love that about him. It's very fun, very nice. But yeah, he talks about Janet as well, his relationship with Janet and her marriage for a little bit, and you know, just different things like that. And he also expressed that he would love to find a woman to settle with, get married, and have 13 kids. I'm like, damn, boy, couldn't be me, but that's all you. And I wish he would have done that. I really wish he would have done that, but you know. But I am glad that he actually had kids at the end of it, because I think if he didn't have kids, I feel like that would have been such one of those things that be like, oh, I wish he had kids. But I'm glad we don't have to say that. I'm glad that he actually had kids and he could experience fatherhood. I really am glad that he did do that eventually. Okay, and then Michael continues to talk about his experience with Captain EO, and also his experience with creating We Are the World very briefly. He doesn't really go too much into detail with Captain EO and We Are the World. But then the creation of Bad is being brought up, okay? And it took them 2 fucking years to actually create Bad as an album, and that is so crazy. But the end result was bomb as hell. And this is another thing I really love about Michael, is that his music isn't just one genre. He like plays around with every single genre, and he loves all types of music. He's like, I don't believe my music isn't just for one race or anything, or one genre, or it's not put into a box. Like, it's literally everything. And I really, really love that, and I agree with that 100%. Of course, there's nothing wrong with having a niche as an artist and things like that, but I really love, that's why I also really love Stray Kids too, is one, they're self-produced, and 2, they just do whatever sounds good, you know what I mean? They are their own genre in a way, and, you know, they do a bunch of genres, and they play around, and they experiment, and that's what I really love, and that's what Michael did too. So I think that's, you know, 2 and 2, you know, I listen, I'm really drawn to that. I'm really, really, really drawn to that. And something that I really loved from this section here, it's on page 265, and he talks about the song Bad. Now, initially, I've always got the gist of what Bad as a song meant. You know, you're not this, you think you're this, you're not that, you're not as tough as you think you are, you know, blah, 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 blah. But how he explained what bad truly means, what he means by being bad, right? Because obviously the definition of bad is that you're doing wrong things, you're getting into trouble. It's a negative connotation with the word bad, but not in Michael's case. No, because this man has a different definition for bad, and he uses bad differently, and he sees being bad and badass a lot differently. So I'll kind of read this to you because I really like this quote. I really like this. Bad is a song about the street. It's about this kid from a bad neighborhood who gets to go away to a private school. He comes back to the old neighborhood when he's on break from school, and the kids from the neighborhood start giving him trouble. He sings, I'm bad, you're bad, who's the best. He's saying when you're strong and good, then you're bad. Basically, what Michael's getting at is that when you're a good-willed person, your heart's in the right place, and you're strong, and you're that bitch, that's when you're a badass. That what makes you a badass. You know what I mean? I really, really love that. I don't know why, but I just really, really fucking love that. And to me, that's just round of a fucking applause. And because of that known fact, and that I found that out, I have such a bigger appreciation for that song, because now it's like I really get it. Like, I already got the gist of it before, but now I really get it. And so I've always wanted the bad logo as a tattoo. I still plan on getting that, but now I definitely want it as a tattoo because of the meaning. Because not only does it fucking look cool, but I really love the meaning, because you being a good-willed person and you being strong and independent and stuff, that's what makes you a badass. And that's what Michael's conveying in that song, because Michael plays Daryl, who is, you know, like you said, he was originally from a bad neighborhood, and he went to a private school. He came back for the summer for break, and his older friends start giving him trouble because, you know, they think he's, oh, you're too goody two shoes, you know, blah, 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 like, show me who's bad, you know, like, you're not bad, like, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, Daryl, in the film, he's like, you aren't bad, you ain't bad, you ain't nothing, okay?
You ain't bad, you ain't nothing! You ain't nothing!
He thinks how they are and stuff doesn't make them a badass. He doesn't think it makes them cool. Hence the entire message of that short film and song. And at the end of the day, who walks away and who stands there in triumph? Yeah, Daryl. I really love that. I don't know why. I'm obsessed with that. I love it so fucking much. And now I'm definitely gonna get it tattooed, because I think the meaning is also just so fucking cool and amazing. And oh, I love Michael. He's so fucking like, yeah, and Michael he had such a good head on his shoulders. He really did. And as you read this, you will understand. Then again, even though Michael didn't write Man in the Mirror, I feel like Man in the Mirror was such an amazing song and a perfect song for him to sing, because one, it resonates with him, and two, Michael has such a powerful voice to do that song justice. So it's amazing. And I agree with the message of Man in the Mirror too. If you want to make the world a better place, girl, you gotta look at yourself and reflect on yourself first and change yourself first before you can do any of that. And I love that. Start with yourself. Don't be looking at all the other things. Start with you. Mic drop, bitch. Oh my god, like, come on. He wrote all of the songs except Man in the Mirror and Just Good Friends. Like, okay, period, Michael, I see you, bitch. Like the other chapters from before, he talks more about the songs, the process, and all of that stuff. Talks more about how serious he is about his privacy and about him being famous. And he's like, I can't really say whether I like it or not, but all I gotta say is that fame is a price to pay. It really is, because Michael really values his privacy, and he always has throughout his entire life. And that's anybody wants their fucking privacy, and Michael was no fucking exception. But even though he can't really straight up say yes or no whether he likes being famous or not, he loves setting and achieving goals, and he loves making people happy. But more importantly, he just loves setting goals and achieving them and really exceeding the goals. Like, he does love that aspect of it, and of course he loves the creating of it and things like that. So, but it is a heavy price to pay. And then he also talks about children. He said, they notice everything. They aren't jaded. They get excited by things we've forgotten to get excited about anymore. They are so natural too, so unself-conscious. I love being around them. There always seems to be a bunch of kids over at the house, and they're always welcome. They energize me, just being around them. They look at everything with such fresh eyes, such open minds. That's part of what makes kids so creative. They don't worry about the rules. The picture doesn't have to be the center of the piece of paper. The sky doesn't have to be blue. They're accepting of people too. The only demand they make is to be treated fairly and to be loved. I think that's what we all want. Yeah, so he expresses that, and he expresses how I would like to think that I'm an inspiration to the children I meet, which he definitely was, and still is today. Their approval means more to me than anyone else's. It's always the kids who know which song is going to be a hit. You see kids who can't even talk yet, but they got a little rhythm going. It's funny. But they're a tough audience. In fact, they're the toughest audience. There have been so many parents who have come to me and told me that their baby knows Beat It or loves Thriller. George Lucas told me his daughter's first words were Michael Jackson. I felt on top of the world when he told me that. So cute and so fun and so real, by the way. And he expresses how he visits children's hospitals and it makes him really happy to brighten those kids' day just by showing up and talking with them and listening to what they have to say and making them feel better. And so he also expresses that he hates seeing the kids sick, and because they don't even understand themselves what's happening, and it really hurts his heart. When I'm with them, I just want to hug them and make it all better for them. Sometimes sick children will visit me at home or in my hotel room on the road. A parent will get in touch with me and ask if their child can visit me for a few minutes. Sometimes when I'm with them, I feel like I understand better what my mother must have gone through with her polio. Life is too precious and too short not to reach out and touch the people we can. You know, when I was going through that bad period of my skin adolescent growth spurts, it was kids who never let me down. They were the only ones who accepted the fact that I was no longer little Michael and that I was really the same person inside, even if you didn't recognize me. I've never forgotten that. Kids are great, and if I were living for no other reason than to help and please kids, that would be enough for me. They're amazing people. Amazing. And again, Michael has always had this love for kids, and it was never a creepy thing because it just came so genuine and so pure, from his heart, bottom line. And on this channel called Celebrity Classified, they released some unreleased interview footage and things like that, and there was one with Catherine that I watched, and she expressed that when Michael was a kid himself, he would see these commercials with African children who were starving and, in deep fucking poverty. God, I cannot talk. Michael would straight up cry. He's always been very sensitive about this stuff, and he told his mom, he's like, when I'm older, I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna help out any way I can, and did. Though Michael didn't fix anything, because you can't truly really fix any of those things, he helped tremendously. So when Michael has a goal in mind, he will fucking achieve it. It doesn't matter what it fucking takes, bitch. He will achieve that goal. We've always loved kids. They've always been such an inspiration to him because he's always felt safe with them, because they don't judge, they don't lie, they don't see Michael Jackson as Michael Jackson. Of course, I'm sure there's kids who fangirl and stuff, but for the most part, they just want to be his friend. They just want to relax and have a good time. And then it kind of leads on to Michael kind of slowly fizzling out to the end of the book. Just talks about his image, and he was like, I have this goody-goody, persona in the press, and I don't really like that, but, I can't really help that because he is a shy person. He's like, I'm very much a person who has control over his life, but that was... as his life went on, that was slowly deteriorate, but that's neither here or there. But basically, we just talk about that, his image, everyone has many facets to them, and I'm no different. When I'm in public, I often feel shy and reserved. Obviously, I feel differently away from the glare of the cameras and staring people. My friends and my close associates know there is another Michael that I find it difficult to present in the outlandish public situation I often find myself in. So it's different when I'm on stage, however. When I perform, I lose myself. I'm in total control of that stage. I don't think about anything. I know what I want to do from the moment I step out there, and I love every minute of it. I'm actually relaxed on stage, totally relaxed. So yeah, Michael is literally he was two different fucking people. On stage, he was a fucking monster. On that, he was crazy, he went insane with it, right? And off stage, he was shy, reserved, quiet. This is another quote that I really liked in here. Sometimes when you're treated unfairly, it makes you stronger and more determined. Slavery was a terrible thing, but when black people in America finally got out from under that crushing system, they were stronger. They knew what it was to have their spirit crippled by people who are controlling your life. They were never going to let that happen again. I admire that kind of strength. People who have to take a stand and put their blood and soul into what they believe. And I 100% agree, and I really, really love that sentiment. And then Michael just continues to kind of just gush about what he loves and what he likes. And this is another thing that I really like and really love about Michael. A lot of celebrities say they don't want their children to go into show business. I can understand their feelings, but I don't agree with them. If I had a son or daughter, I'd say, by all means, be my guest, step right in there. If you want to do it. Even though like Michael, I understand that, I understand not wanting to put your kids in the spotlight and things like that. But if they want to do it, let them do it. But be protective. Protect them. Be attentive. Be careful. Because yes, that shit is dangerous when it comes to kids and Hollywood and just that industry and music industry. So if you're going to let your kids do that, please protect them. Please be careful and take everything your kid says seriously, no matter what. So that's what I really love about Michael, is that he would never tell anybody, especially his own kids, or even hell, his nephews and family members, what to do and what not to do. He's like, if you want to do that, fucking do it. And he did that with his own kids. He said, what do you want to do? Film? Okay, let's study up film. And I think that's so admirable, and that's so amazing to do. To me, nothing is more important than making people happy, giving them a release of their problems and worries, helping to lighten their load. I want them to walk away from a performance I've done saying, that was great, I want to go back again, I had a great time. To me, that's what it's all about. That's wonderful. That's why I don't understand when some celebrities say they don't want their kids in the business. I think they say that because they've been hurt themselves. I can understand that. I've been there too. Michael Jackson, Encino, California, 1988. And the book ends. In the 2009 reissue, like I said, it kind of turns into, it shows a quote from Michael, and then Shay Earhart kind of tells behind the scenes look on Michael and the making of the book, which I already told y'all in the beginning. Now, and we're done with the book. Now, I know I said I wasn't gonna make it this fucking long, and yes, this review isn't in-depth, but I did go overboard and just decided to go just skim through each chapter and tell you what was up. So, sorry. So my final thoughts again on this book is that it is a great book to read if you want to get into the mind of Michael Jackson. Like I said earlier, a lot has happened since 1988. And a lot of traumatic stuff has happened since 1988. And yes, Michael didn't tell everything, but to me, he told just enough to keep you interested and to make you understand him more. So I 100% recommend reading this book and getting deeper into it. And again, if you don't want to read the book, or you don't have the resources to read the book, find a more in-depth analysis than mine that is more professional and more thought out, and maybe see if your local library has this book. If you don't want to buy it, because I ended up buying it because I genuinely actually want to own it, but if you don't want to buy it, see if your local library fucking has it to check out and read it for yourself, because to me it is really worth the read. 10 out of 10, love it. Love it, love it, love it. So that'll be the end of this video. Again, sorry that it's long. Sorry. I hope you enjoy this anyway. Please leave in the comments below your thoughts on the book and your thoughts or anything on that, your add-ons and things like that. You know, let's start a conversation. Respectful conversations, please. I don't want no bullshit like, oh my god. With that, I'll see you in the next video, whenever that will be. And yeah. Bye. Thank you so much for watching again. Bye.